What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Inside the Draw. I am Kevin Lawler. I'm recording in Denver. This is the middle Thursday night of week one in Roland Garros. So, we've almost, considering it started Sunday, we've almost got a full week of the tournament in the books. Certainly a good couple of days. A couple of major storylines. Obviously, the biggest storyline is the heat and how extreme that's been in Paris. And I think, it was forecast, but at the same time, it's unusual how hot it is. So, players struggling, and the highest profile of all of those players to struggle is obviously the one seed who is now gone and out of the tournament, Yannick Sinner. That happened this morning. That was a strange one to wake up to. Roland Garros a little bit strange here. Mountain time, it's like 7 hours difference between here and Paris, and play starts basically at 3 a.m. Denver time. So it's a bit of a weird one. You wake up at 7 in the morning, and you have tons of results already in for the day. So checking the Roland Garros app to see live scores and results is a bit of a weird experience, but it is what it is. Australia is actually probably a better time zone for the Aussie Open than Wimbledon and Roland Garros, and then obviously we have the US Open, which is a super time zone for mountain time here in Denver. Yeah, I guess some of the other, let's look at the men's main stories first. I think Sinner is obviously the story. He was coasting, Juan Manuel Cerundolo is a decent player, but he's a challenger player, or he's certainly not out of place in 250s. He's won an ATP tournament in the past down in South America. I think he could have won one in Argentina actually on clay. But he's that level of player. He played really well and made a challenger final. Did he win? He won a challenger final last week. He beat Raphael Collignon, the Belgian, in a challenger final, I think in Bordeaux, and we mentioned that in the build-up to the initial pod for Roland Garros. But he was losing 6-2, 6-3, or 6-3, 6-2, 5-1 when Sinner started to fall apart physically and had no energy and had the issues, almost certainly issues to do with the heat. It could have been cramping for non-heat reasons. He did come out afterwards and say he didn't feel like the heat was too hot to play tennis in, but it's almost certainly the heat. I read some stuff online about how red-haired people struggle more with the heat than non-red-haired people, and there was some data to back it up. I don't know if that's true or not, but I guess it makes sense, and he certainly struggled, and he has struggled once or twice with heat in the past, similar to Casper Ruud. Casper Ruud had almost the exact same trouble in round one, and he was lucky to get out of it. He barely came through. He's obviously had his issues where he went and played Geneva after making the final in Rome, and I didn't think he needed to. I thought he should have had 4 or 5 days off and rest and recover and get used to the conditions in Paris, but he chose Geneva. I still think that's going to come back and haunt him in the tournament. It hasn't yet, but it almost did in round one, even though you could argue that he looked really good again in round two yesterday. That said, I thought Medvedev in round two was pretty poor, so it wasn't a true test. And speaking of true tests, Ruud is going to have a lot of those coming up pretty soon. We had Yuri Lehechka out in the men's. That was a real shocker. He went out to Pablo Carreno Busta, who is a super clay courter over the years, but way past his peak. And Lehechka was like priming himself for this tournament. He intentionally didn't play last week in order to be set for Roland Garros, and then he went out and had a stinker. And that happens. And then the other main takeaway from the men for me, before I move on to the women's, is I think Zverev has been borderline flawless. He's been pretty perfect through 2 rounds, and I think he looks the best player left in the draw. And I think this is his chance to win a Grand Slam, and he will never get a better chance to win a Grand Slam. He still has some very good players. He has all the good players left in the tournament in his half. So, he doesn't necessarily have the pressure of, oh, you have nobody in front of you, just go and win it. He still has plenty of good players in front of him that almost in some degree take the pressure off him a little bit, because he's still got Hodar in a round or two time, and then he's got Djokovic probably after that, or maybe Casper Ruud just to make it to a final. Now he would have all the pressure in the world on him in a final, because he'd be a massive favourite no matter who he plays, but we'll get to that in a little while. I think he's looked amazing so far. I would like to see if his level deteriorates or if he goes into his shell a little bit with Sinner gone. That could happen, and that would be a watch out for me. I hope he stays aggressive and plays as he has played. And then on the women's side, the story of the men's, the story of the top half is that all of the seeds are gone and it looks like a 250 or a challenger, and honestly it does. So it's going to be a really random player in a Grand Slam final from the top half, but the bottom half is packed with seeds still. And the women's, moving on to that, is way more like the bottom half of the men's. Like it's chock full of seeds still, and everybody is still there. The main girl out is Elena Rybakina. That was a really unexpected loss to Starodubtseva in round one. Like, nobody was expecting that, and even when she came back from 4-2 down to 4-all in the decider, I thought, yeah, she's turned it around, she's fine here. And then she went on and lost 10-3, got destroyed in the breaker. She mentioned afterwards that the balls are flying, the heat didn't suit her, and she just couldn't control the ball. And I play a bit of tennis here in Denver, not competitive, but like the difference between here and sea level, for example, it's not the same thing that Rybakina is talking about, but like it's still conditions impacting the ball in a way you're not expecting. And it's bananas how far the ball flies here, because you're at 5,500 feet altitude. And it would be something similar. Also, 100-degree heat here sometimes, but it's also the same in Paris. Like, they don't have the altitude, but they have the crazy weather this week, and it's just having a massive impact on how the ball is flying. And I guess that's what she's talking about. So Ostapenko's also out. She looked decent in round one, and obviously we were all looking forward to a Swiatek-Ostapenko round 3 matchup that would have been really exciting, but Magdalena took Ostapenko out, and I wasn't overly surprised at that, because all the pressure was on Ostapenko there was none on Linette, and Linette looked pretty good in round one and took out Ostapenko. So now I'm pretty sure Swiatek will be very, very confident, and I think she'll be completely fine against Linette in round 3. And then the other big name that went out early that I had somewhat high hopes for was Linda Noskova. And she was really bad. Her loss was a weird one, because like her technique fell apart. Like, if you go back and look at the highlights, she just wasn't playing. I said something about her in the preview a week ago, and I was big on Linda Noskova last year, and then I watched her in Australia this year in the Aussie Open, and I was horrified by her form and her technique. And then again, like a couple of months later, you fast forward to Madrid, and she's beaten Coco Gauff, and she looks great, and her technique is perfect. But it's like when she starts to play poorly and doubts herself, her technique is the thing that goes, and that's a real problem. So that's what happened to her this week, and she's gone. And then just really briefly to finish off on the women's before we get into a look at the draws again and some of the betting. I think Coco Gauff has been flawless. I think she's been super so far through 2 rounds, looks terrific, and I'm excited by that. Iga Swiatek, to be fair to her, has looked super through 2 rounds. Her tests come a lot sooner than Goff's tests come, for my money. I think Swiatek is going to have some real tests in the next less than a week, probably the next 4 or 5 days. She's going to have some real tests. Svitolina had a really tough round 1, like we said she would. She played Anna Bondar. Yeah, it was Anna Bondar, and they went 7-6 in the third. Svitolina came from a set down and won it in a championship tiebreak in the third set, so really uncomfortably close for her, but she got it done. And then she looked great in round 2. And the last thing is, I feel Mukova's playing really well. She was down a break early in the first match, and down, I think, 5-2 double break. I can't remember. But she came back, won the first set, and then from there, her next 3 sets, she's been coasting. She coasted through the second set of round 1, and she's coasted through her round 2. So delighted by Mukova's progress. She looks super. And obviously, Rybakina going out really helps her, because they're in the same quarter. And then the only other girl to touch on, I thought Sabalenka was dodgy enough in her 2 matches, but I think it's fair to say she's finding her groove, and the last set today looked pretty good. So yeah, I'm not sold on her yet. We'll get into the women's draw in a minute. But given that we've played, we're into the third round of both tournaments, I want to have a look now quarter by quarter again and almost redo it to some degree, just because of how many big names are gone out, and where we are in the tournament, and there's lots of stuff to go through here on a quarter level. So I'll keep it way shorter this time than the pre-tournament pod. That was way more in depth. It's going to be way shorter. I'm going to start in the men's. I said like quarter 1 of the men's the first half of the men's is basically like a challenger, and it really is. Like the first 4 names on the draw sheet are Juan Manuel Cerundolo against Martin Landalus, and then Matteo Berrettini against Francisco Comisana, and they're 250 players these days. Faria against Tiafoe, and Arnaldi against Collignon. So you can see the bottom half of quarter 1 is a lot stronger than the top half. I think Tiafoe has been good. I rate Tiafoe, and I think he has a big pair of balls on him. I like his attitude when he gets into slams, and I like that he raises his level when he gets to these kind of tournaments, and I'm impressed with him. I have a friend back in Ireland who told me very early in the tournament that Sinner didn't have the legs for best of fives, and I'm kind of annoyed that he turned out to be right on this occasion. I still think Sinner has the legs for best of fives, but he does seem to struggle physically when it comes with these, outlier conditions, and that's, he's been proven right. But I thought of that because he also told me he likes TFO, and I came to that conclusion independently as well, that I kind of like TFO here. The thing with TFO though, so he had a super win over Hubert Hurkacz today, and I thought Hurkacz was well primed for a decent run in this tournament, and it was a really close 5-setter with 3 tie breaks in there, so it was a really close match. So TFO, is good, and Hurkacz was also pretty good. The problem with TFO here is not a problem necessarily, but he's in for a pretty tricky fourth round. If he does get past Faria, which I expect he will, he's in for a pretty tricky fourth round against either Arnaldi or Collignon, and I think both of those are really, really strong, solid clay quarters. So whoever comes through out of those 3, Arnaldi, TFO, or Collignon, will be in the running for a semi-final spot. I think it's between those 3 for quarter 1. But obviously you're going to get one of the first 4 boys into the quarter final, and I don't know which one it's going to be. I think Comisana is a better clay quarter than Berrettini, even though Berrettini's the bigger name, and I would edge towards Cerundolo, Juan Manuel, over Landalus. Landalus played a tough 5-setter today, even though he did win 6-love in the third. I think he's played back-to-back 5-setters, so I never like that for any player. So, Cerundolo has had much smoother progress. He came through in 3 sets in round 1, and then obviously his last 2 sets against Sinner today were borderline walking bys. He was like 6-1, 6-1, and Sinner couldn't move his legs. So I think we'll probably get a Juan Manuel Cerundolo against TFO or against the winner of Arnaldi Collignon, and we'll see where that goes. But that, I reckon that, like, obviously for a Grand Slam, that's an extremely, extremely weak quarterfinal lineup. And then the next section is a little bit stronger, but it's also quite weak. We've got Felix Auger-Aliassime, who's hanging on by the skin of his teeth. He came through in a 5th set championship tiebreak against Daniel Altmaier in round 1, and then he came from a set down today to beat Burruchaga, the Argentinian. He's the one I put up at 150 to 1 to win the quarter, so that was a little bit annoying that he went out in a tight one with Felix today. But Felix was the better player, to be fair. There was a 6-love and a 6-1 set in there. I think he'll beat Nakashima next. I don't rate Nakashima at all. Nakashima's coming through off a 5-setter today where he beat Van Asch in 5 sets, and if you're taking 5 sets to beat Van Asch on clay, the writing's on the wall pretty early. And then the other side of this section is the other bit of this top section of the second quarter is Kouame, who's the Frenchman who's come through. He's like 17 years of age. He came through round 1 against Marin Cilic, which was unexpected, and then he's come through in 5 sets today against Vallejo, the Paraguayan. So yeah, fair play to him. He came back and, he was 5-2 or 5-3 down in the 5th and came back and won it in the championship tiebreak 10-8. But he's going to play Alejandro Tabilo, and I think Tabilo is in a super spot here. Tabilo came through round 1 against Camille Majorjak, the Pole. Really straightforward there for Tabilo, 6-1, 6-3, 6-4. And then he goes ahead and gets a walkover, so he's nice and fresh, didn't have to play in the heat, got a walkover from Valentin Vachereau, and now he gets Kouame on it, who's coming in off a 5-setter. So I think Tabilo's going to beat him in straight sets. I think he's way better than him, and I also think Tabilo is going to beat Felix in the following round, in the 4th round, but he'll be underdog, but I think he'll beat him. And then the bottom half of quarter 2 is where the bigger names are. I mean, the top part of this is Choboli against Lerner Chien. Choboli's going to win that. I'm really impressed with Chien, just in terms of, he's coming in off a really good week in Hamburg last week, and he's battled his way through, even though he went and, what did he do in Hamburg? Made a final, but he's battling through here, even though he's tired. He beat Christian Garin in the 1st round, and then he really dug in deep to beat Diaz Acosta in 5 sets today. So pretty impressed with Lerner Tien and his effort, but he's tired, like he's wrecked. He's not going to be doing anything. I think he'll lose to Choboli pretty comfortably. And then Choboli will play almost certainly Francisco Cerundolo. So Cerundolo came through against Botic in round 1 in 4 sets. Botic van de Zandschulp. I really like Botic van de Zandschulp. And then he came through against Hugo Gaston today, also in 4 sets. The thing with Cerundolo is he now has all the pressure in the world on him because he's the best player left in the entire half, and he's expected to make a Roland Garros final. So that's the problem with Cerundolo right now, and I don't know if I trust Cerundolo under pressure. We'll see. Time will tell, but I would certainly prefer at the prices, as we'll see a little bit later, to take a shot on some of the other players in this first half. But without getting into betting, I think the quarterfinal lineups are going to be one Manuel Cerundolo against, one of those three, TFO, Arnaldi or Collignon. And then I think we're looking at Alejandro Tabilo against either Cerundolo or Chaboli in the second quarter. And then the bottom half of the draw is the way more respectable, kind of, all the seeds are still there, or the vast majority of seeds are still there, and this looks like a Grand Slam draw, even though obviously Yannick is not there or Carlos is not there. First match up here, so third quarter is stuffed with seeds. In fact, there's only one non-seed who's made it through to the third round, and that's Nuno Borges, who is a really, really good clay courter. And Nuno Borges took out Tomas Martin Echeverri in round one in straight sets, and then he took out Miomir Kesmanovic yesterday also that was in 4 sets, but like the last 3 sets are 6-2, 6-1, 6-2. Kesmanovic had some physical issues, I think, but like Borges, my point is, he looks great. So we have Alex de Minaur, who got a walkover from Alex Bloks. I should have mentioned that in the storylines at the start. Alex Bloks got a really rough ride here. He was practicing on a facility for the tournament. It wasn't Roland Garros, but it was a facility just up the street or across the street. For anyone who's been to Roland Garros, you would know it. It's very nearby. It's literally across the road. And he was practicing and hitting. Was he hitting with Hodar? He was hitting with one of the good players. I can't remember, but he was hitting with one of the big names, and he caught his ankle in the tarp at the back of the court, the tarp being the thing, basically the plastic that they pull across when it starts to rain. And apparently it's a pretty tight court, and obviously it's sunny in Paris this week. They don't need the tarps. And he was disgusted that the tarp was there, and he came out afterwards and he put up some pretty disgusted stuff on social media, and I read somewhere a quote from his coach saying they might take action against the tournament for prize money compensation. But anyway, really unlucky break for Bloks. I hope he's back quickly. I hope it's not serious. I hope he gets to play the grass season, because he's been a breakout on clay, and clay is not going to be his best surface, so he will be a massive danger for grass if he can get back fit and healthy. And he's injured through no fault of his own here, so very unfortunate for him. Anyway, Alex de Minaur got a walkover there, so that was obviously a stroke of luck for de Minaur, not having to play Bloks, who could have beaten him. And de Minaur now plays Jakub Mensik, and Jakub Mensik finished his last match, which was a 5-setter against Mariano Navone. Tough matchup, because Navone is good on clay, and he's obviously just come in after winning a tournament last week in Geneva. But sorry, he won it. He lost in the final in Geneva. He won a tournament earlier in the clay season in Bucharest. But anyway, Mensik finished that set in a wheelchair. He literally won 11-9 in the championship tiebreak in the 5th set, and he cramped massively. I don't even know how he managed to get the shot away before cramping, but he cramped massively. He was about half an hour trying to get off the court. But I did read some quotes afterwards where he came out and said he feels fine, afterwards, and cramp is, something in the moment that's massively unpleasant, but once you get it out of your system later, like, I wouldn't be at all surprised. My point here is I wouldn't be at all surprised if Mensik comes out and plays okay and is recovered physically against de Minaur. So that's an interesting one, but obviously a very high quality matchup, 2 great players. And then the winner of that is going to play Nuno Borges or Andrei Rublev. Rublev has looked good. He beat Ignacio Buse, who obviously won last week in Hamburg. He beat him in the first round. Buse was gas, so I wouldn't read too much into it. I actually think Buse would have given a far better effort if he hadn't played Hamburg, but he was totally right to go and play Hamburg. He's a player who was in Challengers last year, and now he's won a 500, so well done to him. And then Rublev beat Ugo Carabali, and that was in 4 sets. So Rublev has had a tough path. Borges could beat him. I definitely think Borges is live there. So that's a really good mini section. Any 4 of those are dangerous. And then the next section, this is the best section in the tournament. It's Casper Ruud against Tommy Paul, and it's João Fonseca against Novak Djokovic. I think Ruud is still going to pay, even if he comes out and beats Tommy Paul, which he's favoured to do. I still think he's going to pay, whether it's the next round against the winner of Fonseca Djokovic, or it's the round after against Rublev or Mensik or de Minaur. I still think all his play last week, all his unnecessary play in Geneva is going to catch up on him, and he's going to lose earlier than he would potentially if he was fresh. So I had a lot of people talking about that, and the reel got 10,500 views on Instagram, but it was a pretty strong opinion. I think it was very poor scheduling on his part. I think it was a poor decision to go there. I think you commit and you go, but like once you make the Rome final, things change. Jesus Christ, like enter the best chance of a slam in your calendar year. Enter that fresh. Like, that's a good idea. Don't go and play 4 unnecessary matches in Geneva. Someone commented something saying, like, trying to explain to me about how Ruud is a clay courter and he has to make the most of the clay season, and it's just not using your head. Like, he went to Geneva and he got 100 points for winning 4 matches and getting knocked out in the semi-final. He earned 100 points. If he made the final of Roland Garros, it's 1,300 points. If you go ahead and win Roland Garros, it's 2,000 points. Like, it adds up very, very, very quickly. It's far more in your interest to be fresh for the clay Grand Slam. You've just come off a Rome final where you've already earned a ton of points. You don't need to go and earn 100 points and expend 4 days worth of effort to get them. So I think it was a massive decision, and I think he's going to pay for it. He looked good the last round, as I said earlier, against Medjedovic, but I do think he's going to pay for it at some point. Tommy Paul can beat him. Tommy Paul looked really good against Sonego, but I think Sonego is, he's certainly not in form this season, so I'm not reading into that. I do think Ruud will beat Paul, but the matchup there for Paul will be key, and he'll target the Ruud backhand, and Ruud's backhand is his weakness, and Paul's backhand is his strength. So I do think, if you're watching that one, watch how aggressively Tommy Paul targets Casper Ruud's backhand. That's not going to be any secret to Ruud, but that's what's going to happen. And obviously Casper Ruud will try and dominate with his forehand, as he always does. He has one of the best forehands in men's tennis on clay. And then Joao Fonseca, Djokovic is mouth-watering. I can't wait for that. Fonseca took out Dino Prismic, who beat Djokovic in Rome. So I wonder, part of me wonders, is Djokovic delighted that he doesn't have to face Prismic again? But I did say in the pre-tournament show that I think Djokovic would have beaten Prismic anyway. I think beating Djokovic in a best of 5 is a different kettle of fish. However, I give Fonseca a very decent chance here. I thought he was great in the last 3 sets against Prismic. He beat him 6-3, 6-1, 6-2 in the last 3 sets. So it wasn't like this marathon 5-hour 5-setter. And then Djokovic dropped a set to Valentin Royer. Now, Djokovic did come out. He also dropped a set, by the way, to Giovanni and Pesci Pericard in round 1. But Djokovic came out after the Royer match and he said Royer's level was honestly incredible. And he should have closed it out in 3. He was 6-3, 6-2. Served for them. No, he didn't serve for the match. He was up a break in the 3rd, and he also had match point in the tie break, and he didn't convert it. And he lost the tie break, and then he beat him 6-3 in the 4th. So relatively straightforward. But I haven't been massively blown away by Novak. I think he's been fine. I think he'll beat Fonseca, but Fonseca's very live there, and I'm very interested to see. Like, this is the first true look at Novak that we're going to get, and the first real feel for, is his form there or is it not? And part of me would actually love to see Fonseca go ahead and beat him, just because he's an up-and-comer. My wife is Brazilian, Fonseca's Brazilian. All the people down there are hugely keen and delighted to have someone. It's the first person. They had Thomas Bellucci a few years ago. They've had Beatriz Haddad-Maia in the women's side, but like, it's the first kind of real excitement they've had since Guga, since Gustavo Kuerten back in the 90s. So it's a long time. Late 90s, am I right in saying? Maybe even into the early 2000s for Guga, but certainly, he was obviously a super player, won Roland Garros, and, really complete game. But now they have Fonseca, and I think in the future Fonseca can win slams, but obviously he's a long way to go, and there's some big names. But it's a chance for him this week with no Carlos Alcaraz and no Sinner in the draw, so let's see what he can do against Djokovic. I have a friend down in Brazil as well who went on tennis scholarship to the US, Jan, and he's a huge follower of tennis, loves following the ATP, and every time Fonseca plays, I think of him and I text him, and he's always hugely excited. So I'm excited for him to see what Fonseca can do as well. So look, if I had to kind of have a gun to my head and see who comes out of this, it's 2 really hard sections. I think Djokovic is deserving favourite in the bottom half of that quarter. And then in the top half, it's hard to know. I think de Minaur needed the matches that he got in Hamburg. He lost, I think, in the semis to Tommy Paul. But the walkover here in the last round really helps him. Like, he's had 3 days off now, so he's coming in fresh. So given Mensik is coming in off the back of a 5-setter and de Minaur is coming in fresh, I'm actually going to go ahead and kind of go with de Minaur to make the quarterfinal here and play the winner of Ruud and Djokovic quite likely. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think, Djokovic, if you had a gun to your head, would probably be the one to come out of it, but I wouldn't be rushing to bet him. And then the bottom quarter is weaker just in terms of like the number of seeds in there, and there's been some like upsets, I use in inverted commas, because Taylor Fritz was the seed who was upset, and Yuri Lehechka, to be fair, was a genuine upset and a seed who was genuinely upset. I had him coming through, in terms of the bracket, and I thought he'd be pretty tough test for Hodar, and then it didn't turn out that way. So the first game here in the first match is Alex Michelsen against Rafa Hodar, and Hodar is like this Spanish sensation now. I mentioned him on a pod months ago before he was famous. Like, this is the guy that's going to come out and test Alcaraz and Sinner, and I still think he will, but I still think he's going to lose this quarter to Zverev. Let's see if that happens. He wasn't impressive against Duckworth. That's why I'm a little bit worried about Hodar here, and I obviously put up a bet pre-tournament, which was Hodar and Zverev to meet at 5-1, and had a decent clip on that. And that's, it went they didn't shorten it enough when Feast pulled out. Obviously a massive stroke of luck, Feast pulling out, but they went to 3-1, and then they went to 5-2, and then it went 2-1, and it just wasn't short enough, and now it's minus 150. So I think it's a great chance that clicks, and obviously I'm hoping that it does. But Hodar has a bit to navigate still. Michelsen has looked good. Michelsen beat Shevchenko in round 1 in straight sets, and then he beat Basavaredi in the second round in 4 sets. And Hodar came through against Kovacevic in the first set and looked great, barely dropping games. But then, like I said, I thought he looked pretty poor against Duckworth. He coasted the first set, dropped the second in a tiebreak, and was down a break in the third. And I'm like, Jesus, he going out to Duckworth here. Like, James Duckworth, not known for his prowess on clay, but anyway, he got the job done, 6-4, 7-5 the last 2 sets. I'm going to put it down to heat. It was in the middle of the day, it was stifling, so I'm hoping he comes back to himself and takes care of business against Michelsen. And then you've got Tirante and Carreno Busta, and I'm not worried about either of those really. Tirante played a marathon 5-setter in round 1 against Lamas Ruiz. And then it was a tough enough 4-setter in the second round against Alejandro Davidovich Fokina. So I think, Hodar should come through that little section of the bottom quarter, but I'm not counting my chickens just yet, but I'm certainly hopeful that he does come through. And anyway, I would even aside from the bet, I would love to see him come through, because I want to see him play Zverev. I want to see what he's got in his locker. I want to see Zverev tested. Zverev got the biggest stroke of luck in the tournament so far when Feast pulled out. That would have been a monster. A healthy Feast playing against Zverev would be a massive danger. I would have a healthy Feast ahead of Casper Ruud, ahead of Djokovic, probably slightly behind Zverev, but also ahead of Hodar. So I think he would have been a massive, massive danger. And then he pulls out, so Zverev gets that huge benefit. Zverev looked amazing against Bonzi, and he looked amazing, even better against Thomas Mahash in the next round. And Mahash can be dangerous enough, and he beat him 6-4, 6-2, 6-2. Yeah. So he plays Quinton Halys, the French, and he will beat him. And then he plays he plays the winner of Jasper de Jong and Karen Khachanov. I guess de Jong could upset there, but I wouldn't be worried about either of those if I was Zverev. Khachanov took 4 really tight sets to get past Trungelliti the last day. Was it 4 or 5? 4, 7-6, 5-7, 6-1, 7-6. So I think Zverev will coast through to a quarterfinal, and then hopefully he will play Hodar. But I think he'll beat Hodar anyway. He has an easier path to get there. He'll be fresher, more experienced, definitely more experienced in a best of 5, definitely more experienced at Roland Garros, where, as I said, it's a happy hunting ground for Zverev, and I would strongly fancy Zverev to come through from this half and make the final, and I would strongly fancy Zverev to go ahead and win the tournament now. He's the biggest beneficiary. I had a reel up this morning, and I said at the time he is the biggest beneficiary of Yannick Sinner's exit, and I stand over that. I think even though he's in the other half of the draw, it's his tournament to lose now, and I think it would take an exceptional performance from someone to beat him over a best of 5 on clay at Roland Garros. But yeah, like I said, I think the real pressure comes on in the final for Zverev. It's not really before then that he starts to feel it, and you will imagine he'll come out and say I'm taking it round by round, but at the same time I guess somewhere in the back of his head he's thinking there's nobody here to beat me if I play my tennis, and I think that's the reality. So I think he'll come through and win, but I'm really looking forward to following the rest of the tournament. Going to pull up the women's, and we'll just have a quick look through the women's, and then I'll sign off briefly with a look at the bets. So the women's quarters, you've got Sabalenka against Kasatkina. Sabalenka will be fine there. I think she's just going to overpower her. I think I looked at the head-to-head earlier, and it was 7-2 to Sabalenka, and even though I don't think she's playing great, and I do think Kasatkina is playing pretty good, Kasatkina had a 7-5, 7-6 game today against a girl that very few people have heard of, Bandecki, Swiss. So I think Sabalenka will overpower her, and expect that to be the case. That said, the next round is where it gets very interesting. So she plays the winner of Iva Jovic or Naomi Osaka. Iva Jovic in the last round, I regretted it this morning. I should have put a story or a reel or something or a short up. I thought that price was amazing. Iva Jovic was minus 120 to beat Emma Navarro. And like Navarro, it's, excuse me, it was coming... Navarro was coming in off a title last week in wherever she played, Strasbourg, and like she's tired, and the reason the books went up minus 120 is because Navarro beat Jovic last week. But I'm half convinced, and I said it at the time, that Jovic already had her heart set on Paris and her eyes set on Paris, and she wanted to get to Roland Garros and get ready. And obviously, you know, I think it was a 6-1 third set last week, and she went out and completely dismantled Navarro. 6-love, 6-3, very straightforward, clean kill. She beat Alex Ayla in round 1, 6-4, 6-2. I think this girl is going to beat Naomi Osaka. Osaka has come through in straight sets as well both times. She hasn't dropped a set. She played Laura Siegemund, who's, you know, relatively dangerous. I guess she's just a really annoying player to play against. And then she beat Donna Vekic 7-6, 6-4. But I am going out on a limb. I think Jovic is going to beat Osaka, and I think Jovic will trouble Sabalenka. Sabalenka, I think, you know, should be a very strong favourite and a short favourite to beat her, and she probably will, but she needs to be on her A game. She can't come in there with a B- game against Jovic and think she's going to get it done like she did against Giacomo today, and like she did, well, I won't say like she did against Buzas Monero, but she wasn't perfect there either. But I thought she was pretty poor against Giacomo, particularly in that first set today. And then the bottom half of this section of quarter one is Mboko against Keys and Schneider against Olnikova. So I think Schneider will beat Olnikova, and I think Madison Keys will beat Mboko, and Mboko is the favourite there. But again, I'm going to go out on a limb and say I have not been that impressed with Mboko. She dropped the set to Katerina Siniakova today, and Siniakova to me is a doubles player, and I've said that before. Mboko went all the way to a final and lost to Navarro last week. She's arguably fatigued. I think Keys is actually in a pretty good spot. She came through easily so far. 6-3, 6-love round 1, and then 6-4, 6-4 round 2. She hasn't played anyone great yet, but when Keys starts getting into form, she's the kind of player that it's on her racket. Like if she goes out and makes 50 errors, yeah, she'll lose, but she could go out and hit 40 winners as well. So it just depends if she can manage those errors. And I think, yeah, Keys and Schneider is a pretty level matchup, but I think the real danger here is Jovic. Sabalenka's massively favoured still to come out of the quarter, but I think she's got her work cut out against Jovic, I guess, or Osaka, and then I also think she's got her work cut out against Keys if it's Keys. And in the second quarter, I think we are looking at a very straightforward run for Goff. She's been super, like, so far. She went down a break in the very first game of the match against Taylor Townsend in round 1, but she beat her 4-love, and then she beat Maya Sharif 3-2 today. And Maya Sharif is, you know, she doesn't have any weapons, but she's a good clay courter, a very solid clay courter, very at home on clay, the Egyptian. And Goff's next match is against Anastasia Potapova, and Potapova was down a set today against Katie Boulter, and Katie Boulter is allergic to clay. Like, she really, really does not like clay, and I was surprised to see Potapova down a set there. Now, she did come through 4-2 the next two sets, but and sorry, also to like go back to what I said in the preview before the tournament, Potapova has had a super clay season. Like, she's been really good. She made a semi-final in Madrid from a lucky loser position, so I think Potapova is still a danger, but like that is Coco's biggest danger in the quarter. Her next match, Potapova. After that, she will play. If she beat Potapova, she will play either Anna Kalinskaya or Camila Osorio. I would give the edge to Kalinskaya there. Osorio had a really, really, really tricky one against Yulia Putintseva today. 7-5, 6-7, 7-5, coming from 5-3 down in the third. Like, she's an absolute beast to fight. Really good fighter, but Kalinskaya is coming through straight sets, back to back. So Kalinskaya is fresher, and I think she'll beat Osorio, and I think Goff will beat Potapova. And then the bottom half of this is way weaker. Maria Sakkari beat Linda Noskova in round 1, so the Greek is starting to roll back the years a little bit. Fair play to her, she won her second round as well. So she plays Chelinska, the Pole, and that's the girl who upset Zheng Qinwen. I had a person from China on social media giving out to me in the comments about my pronunciation of Zheng Qinwen, which is what I said. It's apparently Zheng Qinwen. So apologies. They said if you're going to have a podcast, the least you should do is go away and figure out how to pronounce the player's name. So I guess that's fair. So I'll do my best going forward. I think my pronunciation of most of the names are pretty good, but the the Chinese players are just a little bit harder for me, but Zheng Qinwen. So Chelinska took her out in round 1. That was a surprise. And then she went away and backed that up with a 6-4, 6-love win over Elise Mertens. So honestly, you would have to consider her the favourite to beat Sakari. And then my girl, Diane Parry, she beat Kalinina in round 1, which was a great win. And then she went out and she beat Anne Lee today in straight sets, another great win. And now she's up against Anisimova. Anisimova she won the first set 6-love against Graver today, and then Graver retired. So, but I think Parry could beat Anisimova. I'm like, Anisimova has huge power and huge ceiling, really good game, but I don't think she's in super form. At least if we haven't seen it yet. She probably hasn't played enough tennis because she hasn't played tennis at all in this clay season until Roland Garros round 1. So I wouldn't be surprised, let's say, if Parry goes out and beats her. And I actually think Parry's a bit of value in the match betting there. But anyway, the bottom line here is I think if Goff can get through Potapova and Kalinskaya, I think they're her tougher matches than a quarterfinal. Even if it's Anisimova, I think it's not necessarily a healthy or a super healthy peak in Anisimova. So I think, we're probably looking at a Sabalenka-Goff semi-final, and I would give Goff a really, really good chance there. And I'm still obviously really hopeful that Goff wins her quarter at the least. That was a bet I put up and back at the start of the week, and I've been putting that into bets with Hodar and Zverev to meet basically since the start of the tournament. So I'm hoping that Goff can win the quarter at the very least, and anything from there is a bonus. Let's move on to the bottom half then before we finish up. Elina Svitolina plays Korpach. Svitolina will win that and play Bencic or Stearns in the 4th round, and again she'll be quite comfortable for Svitolina there. And on the other side of the third quarter, you've got Marta Kostyuk, who's going to beat Victoria Golubic. And then you've got Iga Swiatek, who no longer has to play Ostapenko, and she's going to play Magdalene. So I think you're going to see a Svitolina, either Bencic or Stearns. I certainly give Stearns a chance there. They both won 6-4, 6-love in the last round, and then that's going to be the semi-final, the quarterfinal there. And I think we are going to get the Marta Kostyuk, Iga Swiatek 4th round, which will be very interesting given Kostyuk hasn't lost a match in the entire clay season to date. She won Madrid and then she took Rome off, and she didn't play in Strasbourg either, but she's come out, basically all guns firing here. She beat Selekmatova 2-3 in round 1. She did drop a set to Volynets in round 2, but she was pretty comfortable. It was a 6-7 for a set. Then she won 3-3 from there. So I think she does look good. I think even though Golubic has come through without dropping... Actually, Golubic has come through Panna Udvardi 6-love, 6-2 and Alicia Park 6-2, 6-2. So she hasn't been pushed at all. But I would be amazed if she could trouble Kostyuk. I do expect Kostyuk to come through that and face Iga Swiatek, who I expect to be comfortable against Magdalene. So the reason that I think Swiatek is way too short for this quarter, and I think Svitolina is actually the value, is because just the route. Swiatek has to come through Kostyuk just to get to a quarterfinal. Kostyuk is very live to beat Swiatek in that matchup, and obviously Svitolina has a far easier path to get there with Korpach and probably Bencic. And Bencic is playing great, by the way. I have huge time for Bencic. I am a massive Belinda Bencic fan and a Belinda Bencic believer, but I think clay is obviously her worst surface. She's super on grass. I love her for any grass tournament, and including Wimbledon, and I really think she's good on a fast hard court as well, but I don't think clay is her thing at all. So I think it'll be Swiatek and Svitolina probably, and we'll see how that goes, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if it was Kostyuk. And then the bottom quarter is where we have a little bit of carnage like the men's draw, purely because Elena Rybakina got beaten by Starodubtseva in round 1, the Ukrainian, who made the final, by the way, of Charleston and lost to Jess Pegula at the start of the clay season. You have Mira Andreeva against Marie Buzkova in the first match in quarter 4. Andreeva will be fine, but it's a match that she could lose, I guess, or could have some trouble with. She can't go out there with a C game and win it, but she can probably go out with a B game and win it. So I think she'll be fine, but she doesn't have as easy a match as Mukova has. My girl, Mukova, in case there was any doubt. Mukova plays Jill Teichmann, and I think she'll destroy her. She came through against Rakimova today, 2-2. She came through in the first round, 7-5, 6-2. So her last 3 sets have all been 6-2, 6-2, 6-2. And that's music to my ears. I'm on her outright at 40-1. I'm on her in the named the finalist market with Coco Gauff at 100-1. I'm on her for the quarter at 7.5-1. So she's the girl for me. I was kind of getting my hopes up when Andreeva was a set down to Basels Ribera in the second round, but she came back and won 1-1. So I do think we're going to get that Mukova Andreeva 4th round, and whoever wins that's going to be a very, very strong favourite to beat Sorona Kirstea down in the bottom in the quarterfinal. So the last 4 girls are Salona Sierra, who plays Sorona Kirstea. It sounds like a poem, but Sierra is live there. She's been great this season. She's got a huge serve and a lot of weapons. So Kirstea is not a sure thing there in that one. And then the other match is Jiyu Wang. I'm afraid to pronounce the Chinese name now in case I get given out for it. But Jiyu Wang plays Starodubtseva. And, sorry, I should have touched on this as well at the start. It's Haley Baptiste. Massively unfortunate injury break against Jiyu Wang in the last round. It was Jiyu Wang serving 5-4 deuce to close out the first set, and Baptiste she jumped. She was hitting a forehand, but she was kind of leaning backwards and jumping like a foot off the ground, and her left knee just buckled and gave way on landing, and she definitely did something to some ligaments in her left knee, and I just hope it's not going to be in a career defining moment. It certainly will be a grass court season killer. It could be a hard court season killer as well. I think if you said to Haley Baptiste, here, you're perfectly healthy for the Aussie Open and you're back in time for that in the same form you're in now, she'd bite your hand off for it. And fingers crossed that she comes back and makes a full recovery. I was really excited to see how this tournament was going to go for her, particularly with Rybakina gone. I think she had a real chance to make it to a quarter final here against Mukova or Andreeva, and obviously she had that chance stolen from her, so that's a massive pity, and hopefully she'll be fine in the long run. But massive chance for Kirstea and Sierra to make a quarter final of Roland Garros, but absolutely all eyes on Karolina Mukova and Mira Andreeva in that quarterfinal. If Mukova comes out and beats Jill Teichmann 2-2 or something like that, and Andreeva takes 3 sets against Buzkova or struggles a little bit, there's very little in the match betting price between Mukova and Andreeva, and that's exactly what I said in the pod in the preview of the tournament before the tournament started. It's like, this is not reflective of the actual gap between these players. It's like Andreeva was like plus 170 for the quarter, and Mukova was like plus 750, and it made no sense. It's like the match betting is like $1.70 Andreeva there, or maybe $1.60, but it's certainly not that gap. And obviously, and honestly, it could be closer if like I said, Mukova comes through flying again against Jill Teichmann. And I think Mukova has the tennis not just to win that matchup against Andreeva and win the quarter and go ahead and make the final. I think she could beat Iga Swiatek. I think she could beat Svitolina. I think she could beat Kostyuk. In fact, I'd have her favourite over probably Svitolina or Kostyuk personally, and I'm not saying the market will have it that way, but I would. And she wouldn't be favourite over Swiatek, but she could beat her. And obviously, I mentioned before, she served for the Roland Garros title a couple of years back playing against Swiatek and didn't get it done. But that's the draw. That's what we're looking at. Very interested. I can't wait to see how it plays out. Last minute or two here, some of the bets that we put up at the start that are going really well that I've backed and mentioned to others on the pod, obviously on the betting preview. Coco Gauff to win the quarter, and obviously that's a bit shorter now. It's not drastically shorter. I think it was like plus 120 and now it's minus 110 in places, minus 120 most places. And also Coco Gauff outright. Coco Gauff was like, that's not one that I was really high on, just because like she was 10-1 a week before the draw, and then after the draw she's like 6-1, so wasn't one I was massively keen on. But the one I do have her on and that I was massively keen on was the name the finalist with Mukova, so that was 100-1, and that is now into 28-1, so really excited about that one because it's a decent payout. And then the other main bet that I put up and that I was after was Zverev and Hodar to meet at 5-1, and I said earlier, like I was on that again at 3-1 after Feast pull out was nowhere near short enough, and again at 2-1, and now it's minus 150, so that's in a great spot. Touch wood that can go ahead and happen. And then the other one that I wanted to mention that's actually the most annoying of all, I said in the name of the finalists on the men's side, I was putting up Daniil Medvedev against Djokovic at 150-1 and Daniil Medvedev against Zverev at 125-1, and I said the reason I'm doing this is in case something happens to Sinner, in case there's like an anomaly or he gets hurt or he retires or something happens. Lo and behold, what happens? Sinner goes out, gets heat stroke, loses, but like Medvedev has lost to Adam Walton in round 1 at 1-50 match betting price. So just massively sickening, because if Medvedev had won that match, like he's in the tournament, and then like he's a massive favourite to win that half now, given who's left in it. So that like name the finalists 150 and 125 to 1 would have been massive. They would have been the two shortest prices in the name the finalist market. So really stinging about that one, honestly, at such big prices. But anyway, you know, these things happen, and it was a good bet. It was a really good bet, and you know, these things happen. Just unlucky that he went out in round one. Okay, a couple of bets to close out that I think are value now. Basically, any book offering a half 1 and 2 in the men's draw is wrong. Like, you can quite clearly see that the top half is massively weaker than the bottom half. In the bottom half, you've got Zverev, Ruud, Djokovic, Hodar, Deminar, Tommy Paul. You've got everybody. So at a half each way, 1 and 2, the top half is over broke, meaning you want to be betting anybody that you like up there each way, and obviously not betting anybody in the bottom half unless you really fancied a win only price in the bottom half that you wanted to go after. But in the top half, there's 3 guys I'm going to take at the prices with a half each way, 1 and 2, and that's Francis Tiafoe, 33 to 1. I said 33 to 1, which is very Irish of me, but Francis Tiafoe at 33 to 1. So you're getting a little over 16 to 1 to make the final. Rafael Collignon 50 to 1. And Alejandro Tabilo 50 to 1. So they're the 3 that I'm taking outright, and obviously only if you can get them each way a half, 1 and 2. The problem, well, not a problem, but Tiafoe and Collignon are going to play each other before the quarterfinal, so you're probably only likely to get one of those into a quarterfinal, but they will be favoured in that quarterfinal. And then Tabilo just has the best draw in the second quarter. And honestly, I think Tabilo has the level to beat Cerundolo. He's coming in fresh. He won a challenger in Aix-en-Provence a few weeks ago in France. I think he's a super clay game, and you know, he's playing with house money now. It's a really nice open draw with Medvedev gone from that quarter, and also with Sinner gone from the half. So happy to take a chance on the 3 of those: Tiafoe each way, Collignon each way, and Tabilo each way. 33 to 1, 50s and 50s. And then in name the finalist market, I'm going to put the 3 of those up against Zverev. Tabilo against Zverev 40 to 1, Collignon against Zverev 33s, and Tiafoe against Zverev 28s. So I think all of those are a little bit shorter. I kind of worked it out at the back of the envelope maths, and I think all of those are a little bit of value. The one I made the most value was Tabilo against Zverev at 40 to 1. And you can quite clearly see that I'm very keen on Zverev. I think he has the highest level in the bottom half. I think he has the best draw left in the bottom half. I think Ruud and Djokovic and Paul and Fonseca are going to have each other tired out by the time they get to Zverev, and I do think Zverev will have too much for Rafa Hodar. I would be relatively fine and happy with being wrong on that, because I like Hodar, and I would love to see a young lad explode onto the scene like that at his age in a Grand Slam. And then lastly on the women's, two small bets. I still think Coco Gauff is value in her quarter at minus 110. That's with 365. And then I think Gauff Svitolina final at 25 to 1 is nice value. And the reason I say that, Gauff Svitolina pre-tournament was 33 to 1, and since then, like, Gauff has, 2 matches under her belt. She looks great. And Svitolina has lost Rybakina from her half, who would have been, a very difficult semi-final opponent that she now no longer has to face. A potential semi-final opponent, she still would have to face a Mukova or an Andreeva. But, like, to put this into context, Gauff Swiatek final is 7 to 1, and I basically have Swiatek and Svitolina the same price to win their quarter, because purely of the draw, Swiatek has to come through Marta Kostyuk and Svitolina doesn't. So yeah, that's the best bet. That's the best value I could find in the women's name the finalist market. And interestingly, that's the one we clicked 10 days ago in Rome at 80 to 1. Gauff and Svitolina named the finalists. So wouldn't that be ironic if they went and did it again? Thank you for listening. Please like, follow, subscribe, share. I'm on YouTube. This is going on Spotify and YouTube. I'm also on Instagram. I do a lot of reels and stories and stuff on Instagram. I was trundling along at like very low views for a while, and then this week had something of an explosion in terms of viewers and listenership, and that's quite obviously because we're in a Grand Slam week, and there's more attention globally on tennis than there is usually, which makes sense. But yeah, I had some good videos that went above, I think 2 or 3 that went above 10,000 views, which is nice. And a week ago I would have been really excited to think about that a week down the road. So please follow and share and subscribe. I do appreciate it. It makes it all the more worthwhile and easier to do. So thank you for your support, and chat soon. Ciao.